Hello, travelers. Welcome to Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident, and compassionate global citizens. My name is Tim, and this week, together with Citi's E for Education campaign, we're going on a journey to explore how global citizens can put that valuable skill set to work as part of a global career. Throughout this week, we'll be connecting with Citi employees in financial capitals around the world. They've generously agreed to share their stories, observations, and tips for finding success in this highly interconnected global economy. Today, we're traveling to Bangkok, Thailand to speak with Tariq Khan. Tariq is joining us virtually to talk about working, living, and thriving professionally in Bangkok. Before we meet Tariq, though, I want to welcome the teachers, students, Reach the World travelers, and early career professionals who are watching today. Feel free to use the YouTube chat bar to let us know you're here, where you're joining from, and to share any questions you have for our guests as we go. And with that, let's journey to Thailand. Tariq, welcome to Reach the World.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, and thank you so much for staying a little bit late today to talk with us. I want to dive right into it because I know you have a lot to say on this topic. You are definitely a global career professional. Your life and career have been very global. How did you start down the path of global citizenship, and how did that turn into a career that sort of demands global competency for success?
Right. Thank you. So I think first two things. I mean, obviously for me, what drove me to be wanting to have an international career, two people, of course. I think first and foremost, my own father, who was a banker, and he had the unique privilege of working for a Pakistani bank where he was kind of responsible to go to different countries and establish their operations. So he would move around every 2-3 years and go to a different country, open up a branch, and then kind of move on. So that was one reason why I was born in Egypt. Then from Egypt, I moved to Sudan. After Sudan, we moved to Saudi Arabia. And then, of course, we moved to Turkey. And this is right before I kind of went back home to Pakistan to complete my high school education. But it didn't end over there because then I pursued my college degree in the US. And I was on the East Coast, so I went to a small private business school called Bentley in Waltham, Massachusetts. And I spent about 4 years there and was fortunate enough to get hired by, an insurance company called MetLife. And, MetLife was, of course, as we all know, on the East Coast was huge in New York. And I worked for pretty much just like an insurance salesman and started off with the Yellow Pages, right? And that was my career at MetLife. But even then, I think what drove me was the fact that my job and my interest required me to be social, meet new people, meet people who I didn't even know, especially when you're cold calling people from the Yellow Pages. But the other individual, I think, who I also must give credit to was, growing up in Turkey, we had the fortune of working with a lot of bankers who were there as well. And many of them happened to be with Citi. And I think that's where I kind of made that decision when I look at these people, every 2-3 years going somewhere else with Citi. And, Citi had its training centers in Istanbul and other places and the whole jet set career and lifestyle that they had. And I think at that time, in my mind, made it up saying, you know what, if I ever go into banking after college and if I want to work for a bank, it has to be Citi eventually. So that, of course, is from the 80s. And now we're almost in 2020, 2022. So that was the journey, and fortunate enough, I think also because before Citi, I worked for another global organization called Standard Chartered, where again I got to travel the world and attachments in Hong Kong and Singapore, which I guess kind of intrigued me to the Far East, which brings me to where I am right now, and then in Citi, working almost 10-15 years in my home city of Karachi, but being again fortunate enough to work on projects which involved, activity in Shanghai, in Beijing, Dubai, of course, the Eastern Europe, and of course, London, of course, being our hub. But I guess Asia was still in my heart. We came a lot to Thailand for holidays and my honeymoon and everything. But when the Thailand opportunity came in, it was something which, I said, what, this is perhaps something I want to pursue. And I moved here in 2019, August.
What are some of the things you think you picked up in your early life? I mean, you bounced between a lot of different countries. You got exposed to a lot of different cultures, languages, traditions. Were there anything in particular that makes you feel really comfortable just picking up your family and moving to Thailand? It's a big deal for a lot of people to move to another country, and it seems to be fairly natural for you.
No, I think I was fortunate in the sense that, with my parents, you never got a choice, right? When you got transferred, you got transferred. But I think, in my mind, it was obviously the comfort of meeting people. I think, your own social interaction, your social skills over time develop. But I have to give credit to college, right? I went to a college which was extremely diverse, multicultural, people from all over the world. And even in my own experiences, where in high school, when I was in Turkey and other parts of the world, where for me the world never really had borders, right? So my closest friends were from India or from Israel, and at that time we didn't have the luxury of Facebook or Instagram and everything. At that time, it was just maybe a phone call once in a while. They weren't even cell phones, but I think to me at that point, what intrigued me the most was it's an experience of meeting new people, understanding new cultures. The work is pretty much the same, right? At the end of the day, in my kind of line of work, which is foreign exchange, I mean, it's not very different, right? The same concept. But I think it's just the opportunity to meet different people and different clients, different regulators, different volumes, different transaction sizes, different industries. And that's what always kept me going, that, you can do foreign exchange, but you want to be able to do foreign exchange in different countries, right? In different environments, get to meet new people. And to me, this move again was that perfect opportunity, because I think the other thing about Bangkok was really attracted me was the fact that there are a lot of expats in Bangkok. So not only do you just come and you, of course, interact with Thailand, but you get to interact with a lot of other people who are pretty much in the same boat. So that was very comforting for me when I was initially looking at it. Am I going to be the only one in the office who's from abroad, which is not the case, right? So that also definitely was very, very helpful.
Okay, great. Just a great segue to talking specifically about living and working in Bangkok. It's a very unique city. It's got a lot of energy. What do you think you need to know or be able to do to be successful in Bangkok and Citi's Bangkok office specifically?
I think the first thing, Tim, which I think works in any geography or in any country. I think the first thing, and I was fortunate with my employer that they realize these things, is the cultural immersion and the cultural respect. I think we are a global and no border kind of world now. But every city, organization, team have their own cultural uniqueness, which you have to understand. There are sensitivities. I mean, people being educated or people being, very modern in their thought process does not necessarily mean that, one can kind of bypass those cultural sensitivities. And to me, I think that was one big thing moving into Thailand, right? Was where it's not just about packing your bag and showing up at office. It's really about getting yourself to be welcomed and be part of the team and not be the outsider. I mean, every office will have people from outside the country. And if you're going to sit, in your office and not make the effort of learning the local language, understanding the culture, understanding the religion or the holidays, or even the history. And I think even when I talk about the history, every country has history, which, some will talk about it openly, some will not talk about it openly. But actually making the time and effort to understand those things. Because the moment you do that, I think the other person, he or she will automatically open up to you more, because they'll know that this guy is not just here just to, he or she's actually making an effort to assimilate with our culture, assimilate with our people. And it just gets easier. And I mean, of course, learning a language at my age is not something very easy, but a lot of investment of personal time. And, when we're already moving 9 to 5, you've got office, then you've got children who are settling down, to have the discipline of taking out 1 or 2 hours a day to focus yourself on a skill set, which, it's debatable. I mean, it's not like in my particular case, if if you learn a language like French or Spanish or Mandarin, that you will perhaps get many other opportunities to use that language in other geographies, right? Because it's a bit more international. But in the case of, kind of trying to learn Thai, you know that it's very, very specific to your role in Thailand or your time in Thailand. But I think that was very important, and I saw a huge difference in the interaction that I had with my colleagues and also with my team. Because, I didn't like being the person who's sitting in between the team. They're all chit-chatting. And they would perhaps also stop because they're thinking, oh, we're talking in Thai and he doesn't understand. So, they would also not be themselves. And I said to myself that, it's unfair to them. I mean, I should not be the reason why they cannot be themselves around their own team. They're chit-chatting, laughing on jokes or whatever. So that was there. Unfortunate for us, I guess, by the time I had my skill sets ready, COVID decided to push us to work from home. But still, I think we're getting closer to the light at the end of the tunnel. But I think that is if I were to sum it up into three things, I think it's the cultural sensitivity, number one, understanding the people that you work with, and making the effort of trying to meet people outside the office and keeping it non-business, right? I mean, anyone can go and talk about business and what's happening about this. Just maybe taking out 25, 30 minutes, trying to understand what makes them tick, what makes them feel motivated, the team dynamics. Every society has a very different dynamic that way. So that, I think, was also a key factor, which I think I did not have apprehensions, because growing up, I had friends from all over the world, right? So I was never shy, or I had never had any boundaries that, I'm not going to feel comfortable with someone who's from Asia or someone who's from Africa or from Europe. It just came second nature. Lastly, I think also my job is such that I'm a salesperson, right? So I have to talk. I have to go and say hello to people, and I have to make the effort. So that, of course, in itself was also a great advantage.
Very interesting. I'm curious, because you've lived in so many different, wonderful, interesting places. What do you like especially about living and working in Thailand?
I think the first thing for me, as far as Thailand is, is very safe, number one. So I think that's the first thing which I would say. It's extremely, extremely safe. It got a hustle and bustle of a proper, metropolis, Bangkok especially, and the traffic, at least what I experienced when I first 5-6 months over here. But at the same time, I think the people, genuinely very, very nice people. The food, the environment, that definitely was, a key factor in it. But also, I think the fact that what the country offers outside Bangkok. Obviously within a 2-3 hour driving distance, or even a 1 hour flight, there's so much to explore, and a lot of beauty, right? A lot of beauty, and of course a lot of history. I mean, I think for those who are really into architecture, a lot into history, fine arts, crafts, it's been great that way, because you get to learn a lot and experience things firsthand.
All right, great. Well, I'm going to come back to you at the end of this talk and ask you for your number one recommendation for someone who's never been to Bangkok before. So think on that for a second. But I have another business question for you. We have a lot of the people in the audience today, the Reach the World travelers, are interested in making their recent study abroad experiences into a global career. And for someone like yourself who's been so successful, what sort of practical steps would you recommend that these students can take to make themselves stronger job candidates, better positioned to thrive in this sort of interconnected global workplace?
I think it's the first key factor is networking. I think, I've been a huge fan of using, tools like LinkedIn, or even, your old organizations or your alumni networks. It's constantly being in touch with people who you've interacted with, right? Because those people will move. And as those people move, you will get opportunities to, perhaps move along with them, or, move organizations or whatever. But that networking or that connectivity is extremely important, because it will also give you that comfort of going, what if I go to country X or country Y? And that's, of course, very important, having that network. But that network is also about you building and, showcasing your credibility. So the other key word is credibility, right? So when someone thinks of someone, your name popping up. And I think these are very important factors for people who are coming into the job force, is small things like, which we don't think about. And many people in their early careers, They may, hop around one or two jobs. It's totally fine. Everyone does it. Everyone looks for a better opportunity. But I think maybe how do you leave a job? Do you leave a job, with a disgruntled boss or a disgruntled team? Do you leave, with your bridges intact? Because you never know. The world is very small. You will come across these same people in some shape or form in the next 15 to 20 years of your career. So I think it's absolutely important to maintain that network and make sure that whoever you've interacted with, of course, is a sponsor or is someone who you can say, yeah, you can call this person and he or she'll be a great reference for me. So networking is key. Secondly, I think it's just about keeping a very open mind. I mean, one person's bad experience in one country doesn't necessarily mean that your experience is going to be the same. I'll be very honest. I spoke to maybe 7, 8 different people who worked in Thailand. 2 or 3 of them they said they hated it. 2 or 3 of them said they loved it. And you have to then put yourself into their shoes and understand why. There could be many reasons. People could be starting a family, and maybe that's a tough period of their life, and maybe Thailand was a good location for them. Some people who perhaps were maybe at the higher end of their career, maybe in a situation where children are about to go to college, and all that shuffling right before 1 or 2 years before college can be a bit tricky. They might have a different they might have a different view. If you've got friends who play golf, or they love Thailand, right? Because they're like at least 66 golf courses around Bangkok. So everyone will have their own unique reasons behind it. But I think it's important to understand those. So not to take, basically not to judge a book by its cover. I think you should be able to listen to the good and the bad and take upon it. But most importantly, I think it's also your own career plan, right? I mean, I think when we look at being global citizens, to be a global citizen, you have to be able to have worked with, at least in my opinion, 5, 6, maybe 7 different countries, and in local markets. We have this thing, as organizations become very efficient, we all have hubs, right? So Singapore is a hub. You might have Dubai as a hub, London, or Tokyo or Hong Kong. And yes, many people work in these hubs and manage many countries. But I think the flavor that you get in being in each country, understanding the nuances, the regulations, the laws, that makes a huge difference. And I think one has to make that plan that if you eventually want to grow in your own organization and reach the top, you have to be able to have those perspectives. I remember when I was a management trainee, they said to us that, to become a CEO, you have to spend time in operations, you have to spend time in compliance, you have to spend time, in IT or risk or corporate bank. This is the same concept, right? I think other than the job itself, what job role you do, I think it's which parts of the world that you've worked in.
Interesting. I feel like a lot of what you just suggested, from having global skill set to having a network to having an open mind, are all about mobility for budding travelers who want to see the rest of the world and interact with it and work in different places. These are all skills that are transferable, that you can do. Right. And sort of free up your options. That's cool. What is your typical day like?
So a typical day, usually in normal days, my walk to office would be about 5 minutes. These days, because my office is in the room next door, the walk is like maybe 5 seconds. So it doesn't take that much preparation, and I don't have to worry about the rain. But typical day, of course, starts off around about 7:30 in the morning. Making sure, I think, the key factor over here, something I didn't mention earlier, is family, right? I think being able to spend time with your children and your family in the morning, having breakfast together before they go on to their own schedules. But I've always made it a point, even when schools are open over here, to drop them to school. So that's something my wife and I did since they were like 3 years old, and now they're 15 and 13. We still continue to do that. But then, of course, coming into the office and starting work a bit early. I mean, some people, are really want to get to office exactly at 9 o'clock. So, I don't do that. I think I kind of get in by 8:30. Sitting down and just kind of mapping out the day. So that's 2 things which I do definitely to start off the day, mapping out the day. And I would be amiss if I didn't say it, but I definitely, log on to LinkedIn or some of my social networks, catch up what's happening, find out the news, see what's happening, and then work. And even within work, of course, I think it's important to discipline yourself as far as time is concerned. So, lunch break, you take your lunch break, get to go out, meet some people and have some lunch. Usually because of, we being in Asia, and a lot of our colleagues and a lot of our clients actually operating from Europe, weekdays usually 7:30, 8 is when I get done, but that's right, just in time for dinner. So that's how the normal work day is. But most of my day is spent, talking to clients, which again I love doing, managing a lot of the internal stuff that we have, our own requirements, our own, trading activities, and but the most important job that I have is, as a team leader, is being constantly in touch with my team and, communicating with them, motivating them, seeing how things can be done differently, things can be done, better. And I think that's the unique perspective that I bring to the table, that, someone doing something in a certain manner may not necessarily be the most efficient way, but how do you kind of convince people to kind of change how they do something? And yeah, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but I think just being able to get that trust with them, that you're only trying to be on their side. So that's most of my day, how it's spent.
Very interesting. I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of your colleagues around the world too, who are always working with offices in different parts of the world. So you're always sort of trying to line up timeframes, like maybe the end of your day is especially busy because like a different market comes online.
Absolutely.
And like the couple hours that you have to overlap. Do you have like a certain, are you focused mostly in Southeast Asia, or are you also sort of coordinating time zones with colleagues around the world?
Oh, all the time. So I think the colleagues that I interact with the most are in New York. So,
Yeah.
So New York and London, I would say. So, I think I always, and this is a good point, because I think what you make over here, Tim, is, the relationship over time evolves, but they also kind of manage their day knowing where Tarek is and what time would suit him. And I also kind of manage my day, because that's how, when you're interacting with colleagues and being a global firm. But yeah, it does take a few, maybe one or two invites on Outlook, which, need to be tweaked 15, 20 minutes here or there. But that's all part of it. I think because that's just, it's not really us. I think it's the global nature of clients. And I think that's very important for your viewers to also understand that while everything, companies are global and companies are present in different countries, just because of the way, risks and controls and architectures of senior management works, the economy of scale always will require someone, to be kind of in a region where they can consolidate something. And in many cases, we have to kind of match or mirror our clients. So some of our clients, yes, maybe are Asia Pacific centered, or Asia Pacific headquartered, or regional headquartered rather. But then we have clients who, may be based in Africa, or based in Middle East, or, we've got clients in LATAM. So there are different time zones that you have to be. So I've been on quite a few early morning 4 or 5 o'clock calls as well. And I think you take it as part of it.
It's part of the excitement, right? Waking up early. Well, thank you. There's a lot of fantastic advice in that, and I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and experiences.
My pleasure.
With us. To finish on sort of a lighter note, I know you moved to Bangkok in just a couple months before the pandemic started, but for someone who's watching who has never been to Bangkok, maybe has never been to Thailand, what would you recommend that a first-time visitor absolutely has to do or see when they come to Bangkok?
Oh, the local cuisine is just outstanding, right? So I think, you can come here, and I think as far as seafood, as far as, depending on your choices of food, you could even be, if you're, not a big meat lover, you could be a vegetarian. The food choices over here are just amazing. And as I said, because obviously before COVID, Thailand was welcoming in 2019 almost 40 million tourists. And of course, not just Bangkok, but Bangkok is the hub, right? So Bangkok is like the gateway. It's like coming to the, in the US, I guess, one would look at, if you're going into a ship, the Statue of Liberty is like the first opening gate to the US, right? So Bangkok, of course, is that. But I think there's things to do for everyone. I think nature lovers, I think people who, want to go to bars and nightclubs and restaurants, shoppers, malls. Then, as I mentioned earlier, the historical sites, beautiful palaces. I mean, the monarchy over here. So much interesting things to understand, read. The palaces, of course, open up for the public as well. So that way, I think it's got something for everyone. Then there might just be some people who don't want to do anything and just sit on the poolside and sip and have a cocktail. You can do that as well. So I think what I love about Bangkok is that nobody is judging you. You could go out, decked up in a suit and getting ready to go to a formal dinner, or you could go out in your flip flops and your tracks and just be yourself. Everyone is minding their own life and busy and at their own pace.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you for that tip. And thank you so much for sharing all of this wonderful global career information with Reach the World today, Tariq. I really appreciate you joining us again, staying up late to share that with us. We have Reach the World has many more Citi Global Career Journey stops to come this week. So stay tuned. We have, I believe, 5 more continents to visit before the week is done. And if you missed any of our previous stops from last year in London, Tel Aviv, Sao Paulo, Seoul, Dublin, Singapore, Kampala, and more, you can find recordings of those events at Reach the World's YouTube channel, where we've set up a special Citi Global Career Journey playlist. Special thanks to the Citi E for Education campaign and to all our many Citi volunteers for making this learning experience possible. So Tariq, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.